All right, welcome. We're here with author and activist Mike Lux, who's here to talk about his new book, which we've got up on the screen here, How to Democrat in the Age of Trump, published by Strong Arm Press, which is, full disclosure, my publishing house. So I'm thrilled that we've been able to get this out. It's an incredible book. It's quite a read. And in this conversation, I wanted to focus on a piece of that book. And the way I'd put it is the opening salvo sort of in a conversation of moving past the 2016 campaign. And you've identified a particular problem that is going to continue to plague the party, which is this question: should we focus on these white swing voters? Should we focus on bringing base voters out? And your answer, you think, is actually the same thing, can work with both. One of the things you talk about is a study that was done recently. Correct me if I'm wrong here. They went to roughly 800 households or so. So they, not phone call, they went door to door, and they had flyers.
So it was sponsored, the national organization that sponsored it is called Demos Action. Demos Action and their sister organization, Demos, are among the leading progressive populist organizations around. And the conclusion that they came to is one that I've always believed in, is that we make a mistake when we avoid hard issues. And in this case, the hard issue in this country has always been, will always be race. And if you combine, though, an analysis that includes populist economics, that includes Bernie-style economics, along with a racial analysis, you can win the day. And the thing to me that was most fascinating about the study is that it worked better not only with people of color. Half of the people whose doors they went to were people of color. Half were white, working class folks. It worked better with people of color because they were more interested in it, but it also worked better with the white folks. That bringing race into it and addressing that issue directly was very powerful with folks. And I have always believed that the Democrats have been idiots to avoid tough issues.
Some people watching might say, well, why are a couple white guys even talking about this issue? This doesn't involve them. But what's fascinating is that, in fact, the same message that you're saying is effective with people of color to talk directly about race also resonates with white people.
Absolutely.
Which is counter to the narrative that we've been told about kind of the white working class out there. But there is a residual understanding among the white working class that discrimination is real, that prejudice is real. They don't want to feel like they are involved with it, and they don't want to feel like other people's racial resentments are being used to keep them down. And so if you can tap into that, you win on both sides. And so what kind of messages did they find are able to work?
What I have understood over the years is that if you deal with white folks directly on race, if you call out their can we swear on this program?
We're not on FCC yet. Yeah.
If you call out their bullshit, if you talk to them directly, but not doing it in a way where you get on your moral high horse, but doing it in a way where you're honest with people and you talk through these issues and you remind people, look, this is how working people lose. This is how rich people pick our pockets, is by bringing up race and by making you think about race. And I've spent my whole life doing community organizing, labor organizing, working with groups, and I've worked with a lot of people of color. I've done a lot of work on voter registration. I've done a lot of work organizing in those communities and trying to move resources, and also trying to get the damn Democratic Party to move resources into communities of color. What I've found, though, is that Democrats get all obsessive about, oh, these are two entirely different communities and they could never speak the same language and we've got to pick one or the other. And of course, Democratic leaders have too often picked the white folks and not reached out to people of color. But that if you talk to working people about these issues honestly and directly, it's very powerful because very few people have done it. And so I think the kind of message where you do say, look, They're people trying to divide us. You know who they are? They're rich people. They're CEOs. They don't want us to work together. They don't want us to vote for the same people. They want to tell us that we're different from each other. If you are that direct, I think it can work with both people of color and with white working class folks.
I think a good example of what not to do, the way not to do this messaging, would be Hillary Clinton's riff about racism and Wall Street. If you remember, I think it was during a debate, or maybe it was in a speech, where she went after Bernie and said, you know, Bernie Sanders wants to break up the banks. Is breaking up the banks going to end racism?
Would that end racism? No. Would that end sexism? No. Would that end discrimination against the LGBT community? No. Would that make people feel more welcoming to immigrants overnight? No.
And so the takeaway was, okay, she wants to end racism, sexism, and homophobia and the other things, but she's not presenting a path to get there and actually end those. But what she is saying is that she's implying that she's not going to break up the banks. She's not going to do Medicare for all. She's not going to do free college because they won't solve these other problems. And what the research that you highlight finds is that if you tell voters, white, black, and brown, that you do plan to make their lives better with free college, with Medicare for all, by breaking up the banks, or what, you know, fill in whatever you're going to do to make their lives better, they then, white, black, and brown, will give you a ton of leeway on race issues. Like, white people are happy to hear about criminal justice reform from a candidate who they believe is also looking out for everybody's interests. It only becomes a problem if the voter thinks all you care about is other people and not me. Exactly. But if they believe that you care about them, then they think it's great that you're also solving other people's problems, whether it's immigration or...
Yeah, exactly. If you look at polling, focus groups, door-knocking studies of the kind that I mentioned in the book, white folks actually are very open on those issues, and are with us on immigration. They're with us on criminal justice reform. They're with us on all these issues if you just look at the polling. But the problem is that Democrats have tended to be, like Hillary, have tended to be very mushy on economics. You don't know what they're for in economics. You think maybe they're with the big business folks on economics. You think they're with Wall Street because you don't know. They don't talk about it very much. They avoid the topic because they don't want to make their donors mad, or maybe they just don't agree with those of us who are more progressive on those issues. And so if white voters don't think that Democrats give a damn about the economy for them, about their world, about their lives, and all they hear us talk about is, you know, issues that they think don't relate to them as much, that's when they get mad.
And it's not because they're against the issue.
It's not because they're against the issue. Absolutely not. It's because they think we don't care about their lives. It's because we think they don't care about, that we don't care about economics. So if you tie the way you talk about economic issues into a narrative about race and class, you can win that argument. But you have to have a strong economic analysis. You have to go after the class stuff. You have to go after taking on the big boys, taking on big business. And if you do that, you can win.
You have an interesting section in the book that suggests a reason that we don't see more of this mismessaging, and it's about consultants, and it's about people who live in Washington. In Washington, a rich city, high median income, housing prices are high. Everyone sends their kids, not everyone, but all these consultants send their kids to private school. They're always, looking for their next 5-figure monthly retainer. And so they've become accustomed to a particular economic strata that they're in. And they may not even be doing it consciously, but just by the fact of being part of this 10%, this top 10%, they hear those messages and they don't resonate with them. In fact, some people they're just kind of repulsed by them. That can't be right. I'm not the problem.
Yeah.
I'm a good person. I got into this for the right reasons. Let's focus on something other than things that are going to target me as the villain in the story. You've lived that much more. So did it take you a while to start to understand that the people around the table that you were with, the people on the conference calls that you were with, had actually kind of gone native, sort of, and could you see their politics change?
I did see their politics change, and I'll tell you, and it wasn't just the consultants, but it was in many cases it was the elected officials. I mean, I can remember in the first year of the White House, when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton really remembered the people in Arkansas that they had lived with, they really talked about their lives and remembered their lives, and policy arguments would come up, and I remember the president would say, Jimmy down the street from us in Little Rock, I mean, that wouldn't be very good for him. And he was talking about some guy making minimum wage or some small business person barely surviving, and he'd say that tax policy doesn't make any sense for Jimmy. And frankly, I just heard less of that over the years. As we were in Washington longer, as all these donors would come to the White House for Christmas parties and all that, the people that folks were hanging out with, not just the Clintons, but the staff and the consultants, it was a lot of rich people, and that changed the way folks thought. And then I've seen it over the years. I've been in campaign meetings, and I talk about this in the book, where we'll talk about messages that the pollsters say will work, and other consultants are like, well, yeah, but that would make our donors angry. We don't want to do that. And then there's the thing you were talking about where they go negative, where it's like, well, my neighbor down the street wouldn't like that message. Right. Well, of course,
he wouldn't.
They live in very good
right.
neighborhoods because they're consultants and they make a lot of money, right? So anyway, it all sort of combines into this very bland stew. Let's not rattle our rich contributors. Let's not rattle our neighbors. Let's do something more generic. Can't we just all get along? And the message becomes blander and blander, and the politics become blander and blander.
Sharon Strahan, we need to address the white privilege issue and stand by our siblings of color. No high horse. I'm about as white as a person can be. Yes, we can speak the same language. It's the language of morality and justice. This is Dan Schwartz. How do we, the people, fight the hurt caused by the Citizens United decision? How do we move forward the agenda with the Supreme Court as it sits now?
I so much agree with the first comment. I mean, you're speaking my language, absolutely. And I think we can talk the same language because we all have these values. Working people of all races, of all backgrounds, of all belief systems, we all have these values, and I think we can work together on that. I think I have sort of contradictory things to say about Citizens United. It's terrible, right? And it has hurt us, but I don't think it's hurt progressives as badly as we think it has. I have been involved in politics, national politics now, DC politics, for over a quarter century, and big money has always been the most powerful factor in the room. That was true long before Citizens United happened. Big money always finds a way to influence things. Now, sometimes it's through lobbying, sometimes it's through campaign donations, sometimes it's through ads, sometimes it's just through clever PR or old relationships. But we also have ways of fighting back. And I've seen over the years there have been times when progressives have been able to beat big money. We saw it in 2006, in 2008. We saw it in 2012, where we were able to take on big money with populist messages that worked, and I think we can do that. We just haven't been doing it as a party enough.
So Marty Hicks, to me, Flint and Standing Rock have become symbols of this problem. What's sad is those people will still be dealing with class and race problems in 2020. The Democratic primary had a debate about Flint in 2016, then seemed to forget about it. Will it become a subject of discussion again in 2020?
I sure hope so, because it's the ultimate example of a government that just doesn't give a shit about the people who it's supposed to be working for. Flint is such a classic example of the way far right wing and corporate policies work. Just you privatize everything, and then if it doesn't work out, you don't help the people who were hurt. Sadly, what happened in Flint is happening in cities around the country. Maybe not as egregiously. Maybe we're not seeing the publicity around it, but water systems all over the country are being privatized. They're being polluted, and nobody gives a damn, especially if they're in low-income cities or low-income neighborhoods.
You have a bit to say as well in the book about the Obama administration, with which you had you helped elect the president. You worked on the transition.
I was on the transition team, yeah.
On the transition team. But what is your take on what they did right and what they did wrong?
They tried to do some things to help people. There were certainly things that Obama did that I appreciated. Some of the provisions that got in Dodd-Frank, for example, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, were incredibly important. Some of the provisions that got into the health care bill, like the Medicaid expansion, incredibly important. Taking on some of the insurance company rules were incredibly important. And some of the executive orders he did later after Congress had passed over to the Republicans. So it's not like I think he was terrible at everything. But what upset me was that because he was just as focused on taking care of Wall Street and taking care of other big business as the Clinton administration had been, I think we were still just as lost. And I think that did hurt us with both swing voters and base voters, if that's what you want to call them. I think those policies hurt all working people, and they also were poisonous politically. That the only way we were ever going to win and excite people, get people fired up, and also win over more swing voters was to really take on big business, take on Wall Street. And I talk in my book how one of the most striking things in the exit polls in 2010 was how more people blamed Wall Street for the economy than the partisans who blamed one party or the other. And that we lost 2/3 of the voters who blamed Wall Street for the economy because they thought that Obama cared more about Wall Street than about them. And that was the great tragedy of Barack Obama. He could have been a transformational president, and he didn't get there because he wasn't willing to go far enough.
Last thing, Wesley Rose, maybe you can figure this one out for him. How do we win by raising taxes? Fix that messaging.
I actually think that one is maybe the easiest of all. The polling is very clear. People think rich people and big corporations don't pay enough in taxes. They think there's tax loopholes galore, and they're perfectly happy to have those taxes go up. Obviously it gets more complicated if you want to raise taxes on the middle class, and I think there's policy divisions over how much to do that or when to do that, and I mean you're going to have to do that if we do Medicare for all, but you can also sell people on Medicare for all, talking about how much less you pay in premiums. So I think that messaging challenge is not as bad as some people do.